Long overdue, but we're finally back with another Pokemon TCG recap. And what better way to return than the Milwaukee Regional Championships held this past October in 2025. After three tournaments following Worlds 2025 in Anaheim under the Black Bolt White Flare format, this weekend marked a massive turning point. The release of a brand new set that completely shook things up. Mega Evolutions. So let's break it all down. New cards, new decks, and one of the wildest stories of the season. Before we hit Milwaukee, we had one final stop in the old format. Pittsburgh Regionals, the last event of the World's meta. That format was ruled by one deck, Gardevoir EX. After wins at the World Championships in Anaheim, Frankfurt Regionals, and Monterrey Regionals, it felt like there was no stopping a deck which has already amassed over $1 million in prize money. An absolutely absurd dominance. But in Pittsburgh, the streak had finally broke. Liam Halliburton stormed through with Zoroark EX, taking down multiple Gardevoir decks en route, including Aban Ahmed, who was fresh off his Monterrey title victory just a week earlier. And then the new era began. The Mega Evolution set had dropped, bringing back an iconic mechanic we last saw way back in 2014, but this time reimagined as free prizes with enormous HP, attack power, and unique abilities. Cards like Mega Gardevoir EX, Mega Lucario EX, and Mega Kangaskhan EX instantly became the talk of the town. But that's not even mentioning cards such as Lily's Determination, the Solrock Lunatone engine, and a certain Psyduck shaking up creativity. Online testing had exploded in the short time since the release of Mega Evolutions, and Japanese events like the Yokohama Champions League gave even more insight into what to expect for Pittsburgh Regionals. In fact, it was won by a Terra Box deck overcoming Gardevoir in the final. And just before Milwaukee, a certain someone had tweeted. That single post sent the community into chaos. Leaks, speculation, debates, and one question of all. What deck was it? Milwaukee Regionals was massive. 2,305 Masters, 270 Seniors, and 187 Juniors competing for those points, those prizes, and of course those golden direct invitations to the Worlds 2026 in San Francisco. Guiding us through the action, Juancho Saldana, Pablo Meza, Kyle Sablehouse, Chip Ritchie, and joining the casting desk for the first time, Azul Garcia Griego, one of the best players to currently play the game, has suddenly turned commentator. Alright, so it's time to finally dive into the first meta snapshot of the Mega Evolution era. Our first little stats preview here shows the grouped variants of all the decks. So it does show Gardevoir actually leading the way at 14.4%, followed closely by Goldengo at 12.2%. Then, a bit of a comeback kid here, Charizard EX sitting just shy of 10% representation, closely followed by Dragapult, Cerulege, and Grimmsnarl EX, which completes our top 6. If we dive into the data just that little bit deeper and start looking at the ungrouped decks, actually showcasing what decks you'd actually be facing rather than the grouped up archetypes, it was actually Charizard Pidgeot, which was the most played deck of the event, which is wild to see back on top after so many ups and downs throughout its lifetime of play. Meanwhile, Cerulege was able to find a lot of consistency with that Solrock Lunatone engine fitting in so nicely with the attack power of that Cerulege EX. And of course, it comes to no surprise that there are Gardevoir variants, this Gardevoir Jellicent, as well as Dragapult Dustois, continue to round out that list of heavy hitters and heavily played decks. Day one on stream was stacked. Big names, wild decks, and of course that Tord Reklev hype train in full motion. And it wasn't long until we even got to see the deck everyone was waiting for, and it delivered. Round 4, which was the first round we showcased on the stream, kicked off with Joshua Frink's Terra Box versus John Eng, who was playing the same 60 as Tord Reklev. It was the Mega Absol Mega Kangaskhan deck. In round 5, what was even more interesting was another take on Mega Kangaskhan. Nathan Ginsberg bringing a control variant up against Ross Cawthorn's Ceruledge EX. And then just another one, just to highlight alongside all these other fantastic rounds, was round 8, where EUIC champion Ryuki Okada, piloting again that same 60-year sword against one of the best players of the previous seasons, Andrew Hedrick, continuing to play that Dragapult Dustoir, where we saw a true battle of champions. Honestly, if you haven't watched any of these yet, go back and check them out. They perfectly capture chaos of the new format. 8 rounds in Phase 1 meant 410 players advanced into Phase 2 of the tournament, and the numbers tell a very different story. Golden narrowly overtook Gardevoir as the most represented deck, followed by the other big hitters, Dragapult, Charizard, Grimmsnarl, and Ceruledge. But it was the deck that was the talk of the tournament, which is something to really look into here, because it was just behind in 7th place. Now, if we change and look at the different set of data and look at the actual conversion rates, most of these big hitting decks were around the 14 to 22% range. But Mega Absol, a ridiculous 51% conversion. Absolute domination from a core set of players who had brought this deck and archetype, but also players who had picked up on the sort of leaked variants that was coming into this Pittsburgh Regional Championships. Continuing with the new structure of the tournament scene from this season, we do get an early glimpse of well-performing decks from Phase 1, because we do have a streamed round 9 match as well before day 1 finally ends. And we reconvene in day 2, which brought the heat, continuing with our Phase 2 Swiss rounds. Round 12 stream match had Bulin Zheng's Mega Absol box up against Rowan Stavenow's Gardevoir Jellicent, which ended with an insane double heads combo for the actual win. Brandon Salazar's Grimmsnarl EX versus Hiroshi Takada's Enzorog EX was round 13, and then Lance Bradshaw's Dragapult Dustoir was up against Alex Shemansky's Terror Box for that win and in action round 14 to try and make it into top cut. 3 rounds of pure brilliance and 0 room for error. After all 14 rounds of Swiss had been played, the asymmetric top cut was set. There were 11 players who had made it in, and what a lineup it was. 5 Dark decks, 3 Gardevoirs, 2 Dragapults, and 1 Charizard deck rounding it out. And these names included Jackson Ford, Rowan Stabenow, Ian Robb, Sander Perot, Tord Reklev making it with his 60, and a player who's now made his 3rd top cut in a row, Aban Ahmed, a top cut which is truly stacked with champions. And what better way for our top cut stream matches to begin, with Tord Reklev himself, with that Mega Absol deck facing Carson Wasser's Dragapult Dustoir deck in this asymmetrical top cut round. Carson had actually struck first, taking game 1, taking multiple knockouts with Dragapult's Phantom Dive attack. But Tord's Mega Absol was finally able to find some rhythm in game 2, clawing himself back into the game before sealing game 3 as time was ticking and very, very quickly running out. But Carson was unable to really draw out of a horrible, horrible hand. The deck and the hype were therefore then very real. The top 8 feature match then featured a Gardevoir Jellicent mirror. Rowan Stabenow versus Ian Robb, 2 players we had already seen dominating in previous stream games at this very tournament, had a truly back and forth matchup. Ian Robb was able to close out game 1. Rowan was then able to claw his way back into game 2, but despite having the advantage of deciding to go first or second, Ian's setup was just unfortunately not enough and provided Rowan an opportunity to get up his item lock first, that Jellicent's Oceanic Curse, and eventually Rowan was able to take down and make his way into top 4. In top 4, it was a true showcase of our player of the season so far in only 4 or 5 events. Aban Ahmed was looking to make his 3rd final appearance in a row. This time, of course, bringing Gardevoir EX, but taking on Hale Obanota's Mega Absol box deck. And if there was any matchup I would implore all of the viewers to be able to go back and rewatch, it would be this top 4 matchup. Now, after trading wins in both games 1 and game 2, it was unfortunate that game 3 ended in a bit of controversy where a penalty had sealed Hale's fate, sending Aban to his actual third straight regional final. On the other side of the bracket, it was Charizard that was able to surge its way into the final and set up what would be in the final a classic, one we've seen previously before as well. Charizard Pidgeot against Gardevoir EX. It will be Jackson Ford, a long-time Charizard loyalist, facing the unstoppable Aban Ahmed and his Gardevoir EX deck. Game 1, it only went one direction. It was flawless for Jackson. A quick Pidgeot, a quick Charizard, and then a quick Dusknoir was able to very quickly clear the board of those Gardevoir EX lines. From there, Aban knew it was highly unlikely he'd be able to wrestle back from this position. So we saw a fairly quick concession in the hopes game 2 he'd be able to build a far stronger board state to be able to handle that Dark Terror Pokemon attacker. However, game 2, same story, a less than ideal start for Aban, whereas he was looking over to Jackson's board where he had quickly established a Pidgeot EX, quickly established a Charizard EX, and was already swinging for 6 very, very early on. As we often see with Gardevoir EX decks, there sometimes is that need for a turn or two to be bought, and this is where Aban was trying to utilize Monkey Dory's Mind Bend to confuse the single Charizard EX that was in play. But at this point, it came down to Jackson only having one prize left. And therefore, despite missing a few cards which maybe would have just guaranteed Jackson the win, it came down to a final confusion flip. Cue the fist pumps. At this point, it was looking inevitable, but Jackson Ford was able to flip that heads and is your Milwaukee Regional Champion for 2026, earning that direct invitation to the World Championships in San Francisco. Of course, it isn't just the Masters putting on a show. There were 2 further regional champions in the trading card game as well. The juniors meta was a mix of Golden Go, Gardevoir, Dragapult, Charizard, and Ceruledge, plus of course a returning favorite, Raging Bolt. The seniors saw similar trends in terms of the meta share, but there was a little bit more Terror Box sprinkled in. Now, in the end, it was Arissa Wong who won the juniors event with Charizard Dragapult. And in the seniors division, Elliot McQuail took it down with Gardevoir EX. Meanwhile, on the same weekend in Brazil, Belo Horizonte Regionals drew 1,117 Master Division players, and it was a stacked field of talent. But the biggest and greatest thing of all, the finals. A dream matchup. Gustavo Wada versus Gabriel Fernandez. Mega Gardevoir versus Mega Absol. In the end, it was Gustavo who proved he still got it, winning the title, earning his Direct Worlds invitation, and reminding everyone why he's a legend of the game and not yet ready to pass the baton over to the player who had dominated the seniors division, and it looks like he's still going to be a force to be reckoned with in the Masters division. After an incredible weekend of 2 regional championships where Mega Evolutions was finally legal, the next stop on our journey is the Lille Regional Championships on October 25th. Now, where Latin America and North America has already showcased their creativity, albeit with some EU involvement on the first weekend, it is now Europe's turn to showcase that Mega Evolution mastery. And from just what we've seen already in Milwaukee and Belo Horizonte, one thing's certain. This format is wide open and anything can happen with the influence of these Mega Evolution Pokemon. And that wraps up the Milwaukee Regionals recap. Thank you all so much for sticking with me after a bit of a break. The goal now is regular uploads and even more coverage as we continue into the 2026 season. Just let me know what you thought of this past weekend in both Belo Horizonte and Milwaukee. The decks, the storylines, that Charizard finish. Drop a comment below, and of course, like everyone else, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell for the next recap if possible. Lille is just around the corner. See you soon.